Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about Sweet Baby Inc. and how they have unwittingly helped their biggest critic rise to the top, becoming one of the largest and most popular Steam curators on the platform, with over 100,000 followers at the time of this video. But I do believe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, so let's start with the beginning. Using their own website as a source, Sweet Baby Inc. is a company that was founded in 2018 as a consultation company, essentially with the specific purpose of making your favorite games woke, by forcefully inserting their politics into those games against the consent of the fandom at large. Now, of course, the people working at Sweet Baby Inc. will try to dress this up as them just pushing for diversity. However, that's a bold-faced lie. It's important to remember that the Far Leftists that push these kinds of politics are fundamentally opposed to the idea of viewing people as individuals and instead must view them as collectivized groups. As a result, Far Leftists do not write characters, they instead write caricatures, empty husks that can be better described as walking, talking stereotypes. This is also why Far Leftists will continuously argue that black people are all orcs from D&D, or that Jewish people are all Skaven from Warhammer Fantasy, or that Slanesh, a literal god of rape demons, is somehow an example of trans representation done right. Needless to say, this sort of mindset leads to some pretty poor writing, as again, you don't have characters, you have templates, and this writing is only further harmed by the fact that Far Leftists view everything as not only political but also fundamentally propaganda as well, to the tune that trying to stay apolitical on anything is merely pushing the status quo instead. This means that Far Leftists have to virtue signal their opinions on literally everything all the time. These two factors in a nutshell define wokeness, and it's mainly for these reasons that people tend to despise wokeness, which leads us quite cleanly to late February of 2024. With the creation of a new Steam Curator titled Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, which exists to alert gamers to the involvement of Sweet Baby Inc. with various games. Now, while this curator did slowly start to gain popularity, it wasn't exactly viral at first. That was until a couple of employees from Sweet Baby Inc. decided to take action. Firstly, at Lego Butts, who is a consultant at Sweet Baby Inc., decided to complain about the mere existence of this Steam Curator, in a lengthy thread accusing this curation of being racist and sexist for merely pointing out that Sweet Baby Inc. was involved in the development of various games, and that companies should clearly listen to people like at Lego Butts if they want to combat racism and sexism. Of course, the fact that at Lego Butts himself has openly called for the extermination of Jewish people was carefully omitted from this particular thread. A pity, since it serves as yet another excellent piece of evidence that the National Socialists, historically speaking, were not only far leftists themselves, but also the social justice warriors of their time. Because, as I've mentioned before, the National Socialists, historically speaking, viewed Jewish people the exact same way that modern far leftists view white people. It's also worth noting that since this thread was written, evidence has also been found that at Lego Butts was involved in a DDoS attack against a charity event, which is yet another excellent example of the true moral character of your typical far leftist. Speaking of the moral character of your typical far leftist, let's move on to the exploits of another Sweet Baby Inc. employee, at It's Kindred, aka Chris Kindred, who decided to add fuel to the fire by leading a harassment campaign against the Steam Curator, not only trying to get the Curator account itself taken down, but also targeting the personal Steam account of the person running that curation, which, had it been successful, would have deprived that person of the hundreds if not thousands of games that they have bought on Steam over the years. Just to show you once again how tolerant and caring these people truly are. As a result of these various actions by employees of Sweet Baby Inc., gamers were absolutely enraged by what has happened, and of course the Streisand effect has kicked in full swing. Sweet Baby Inc. Detected is a curator that went from less than 10,000 followers prior to that original thread from at Lego Butts to over 100,000 followers by the time of this video. Needless to say, this whole controversy has outright destroyed what little reputation that Sweet Baby Inc. still had as a company towards gamers as a whole, and it's likely that this negative reputation will even spread amongst the major publishers themselves. There's even evidence that Sweet Baby Inc. is engaging in damage control by hiding their involvement with certain projects. Evidence that comes in the form of archives of their own website, listing games that are no longer listed. Adding to this the already downward spiral that AAA publishers have had for the past few years, a downward spiral that it is worth noting is not just impacting video games, but the entertainment industry as a whole. With that context in mind, it is very possible indeed that this particular controversy may be what ultimately seals the fate of Sweet Baby Inc. as a company. And it may also help to further accelerate the decline of wokeness within Western societies. I've said this before, and I do believe it is worth saying yet again here. The tide in the culture wars has very much turned against the far left. Yes, it is still very much the case that far leftists have a massive amount of influence on Western societies. However, that influence amounts to less every single day, and thanks specifically to the actions of the far left. Far leftists have turned the entirety of the mainstream entertainment industry into a sinking ship. It's often the various indie markets to these entertainment industries that are pushing things forward. All of that is to say that either AAA publishers will adapt and abandon wokeness, or the general audience will simply abandon those publishers instead. It's not a question of if the far left will end up losing the culture war in the end. It's more a matter of how long it will be until the inevitable happens, as well as perhaps how thoroughly far leftists will be shunned by society as a whole. Frankly, considering their behavior over the past decade or so, personally, I'd say they'll likely be viewed in exactly the same manner as the National Socialists they claim to so thoroughly despise. You know, while simultaneously cheering on terrorist attack being done by Hamas against Israel as examples of, quote, decolonization, unquote. Which really shows at the end that decolonization is just a synonymous term for attempts at genocide. The only difference is that these are attempted genocides that far leftists want to happen, because they view the specific groups that are being genocided or attempted to be genocided as oppressors. And so genociding them, or attempting to genocide them, should be seen as nothing more than punching up against those oppressors. So again, this is exactly the sort of logic that the National Socialists in Germany historically used to morally justify the Holocaust in their eyes. I know this video has become something of a tangent on the ontological evils of far leftism in general, but when you can point to examples of far leftists arguing that, quote, white DNA is an abomination, or far leftist college professors being tricked into unwittingly praising a feminist rewrite of Mein Kampf, well, at that point, I would trust you, the viewer, to understand why so many people hold the far left with such disgust when the far leftist definition of diversity is arguing that the DNA of an entire race of people is somehow an abomination, that the far leftist definition of inclusivity is supporting Hamas's aims of genociding the people of Israel on the grounds that it's decolonization and therefore an act of inclusivity to commit genocide. Or indeed the far leftist definition of equity, which in practice includes praising a feminist rewrite of Mein Kampf. These are the things that the far leftists ultimately mean when they say diversity, inclusivity, and equity. With all of that said, I will of course endeavor to continue to keep my ear to the ground and keep you all informed should any more news come. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.